No one wants to talk about civics or how the government actually works. And it's all about, I hate Trump, or I hate Kamala, or she's this, or he's that. It's like, that's BS. Let's become transactional American voters.
Do you believe that each person's vote really counts?
1,000,000 times more than people realize.
Hi, and welcome to Common Denominator, a podcast about growth, mindset, and entrepreneurship. My guest is Richard Greene. Richard is an expert in U.S. civics and a legendary political communications advisor. In fact, he served in that capacity for multiple presidents, prime ministers, and even Princess Diana. He'll give us a master class in civics and even provide some valuable public speaking tips. Before we start the show, just a quick ask. If you enjoyed Common Denominator, we'd be grateful if you'd like, comment, and subscribe wherever you watch or listen to this podcast. It helps promote the show and it helps us get great guests. Thanks so much. Now here's my conversation with Richard. Hi, Richard, and welcome to Common Denominator.
It's a pleasure to be here, and what a great theme and title, right? We need this more than ever.
For sure. I want to get right into it because I know that this perpetrated in my mind for years. Do you believe for people out there and how let's just call it the American system of voting is, do you believe that each person's vote really counts?
1,000,000 times more than people realize. And the reason I say that is because on virtually every single thing that people care about on both sides, because we are such a divided nation at this point and at other times in our history, and because so many people do not vote, right? Things can be solved one way or another by an unbelievably small number of votes. Can I give you a few examples?
Sure.
So there are a lot of people in this country who are very upset that the Supreme Court in 2022 overturned Roe v. Wade and radically changed reproductive rights and freedoms in this country. Do you know how many actual votes in a presidential election a few years ago made that happen? Take a guess.
I'd say maybe 10,000 votes. I'm going really low, but...
Yeah, you're way, way, way too high.
Wow.
So Samuel Alito is on the Supreme Court. John Roberts is on the Supreme Court because of 537 votes in the state that you're sitting in right now in Florida in the 2000 election. 537 votes put two justices on the Supreme Court. And as you know, the Dobbs decision, which overturned Roe v. Wade, was decided by 6-3 vote on the court. If Al Gore had gotten 538 more votes in the year 2000 in Florida, he would have appointed those two Supreme Court justices, and Roe v. Wade would still be the law of the land. And that's just one example.
I think I have an instinct as to why, but 80, 100 million people not voting, what's procedurally, like what's the fundamental reason why people are not going out to vote?
I'll tell you why. Again, so I'm a lawyer. I don't practice anymore. I ended up representing a Floridian, Tony Robbins. The last 2 years of my law career helped him.
I call it a recovering attorney. That's you and I are in the same boat.
Oh, mazel tov. Yeah, no, I mean, law school is like New Jersey. It's a great place to be from. And I also grew up in New Jersey when I was a kid. And so when I was in law school in my third year, I was a fellow for the Constitutional Rights Foundation. My job literally was to get into my car in Los Angeles and drive around and teach civics to junior and senior high school students. And so I've been passionate about people being engaged in our democracy for a really, really long time. And I talk to thousands and thousands of people, like every Uber driver, every Lyft driver, every person that I meet, especially around elections. And I say, are you voting? No. Well, why not? And I get two major answers. The biggest answer I get is that the system is broken. It's screwed up. It's corrupted. It's bought and paid for. Politicians are being controlled by corporate special interests, et cetera. And then the second thing is my vote really doesn't count. And neither of those things is true. The reason the system is broken is because everyone doesn't vote. I mean, you take an issue that has like 93% support, which is let's make sure that only people who should have guns, right? So it's enhanced background checks for gun purchases. That issue has been polling above 90% for a really long time, and it still cannot get done. So a typical person who doesn't understand civics is going to go, you see, the gun lobby or gun manufacturers or whatever, they're corrupting the system. The system is broken. I'm not going to participate. It's beyond my ability to make a difference. But the truth is, we are just a couple of congressmen and a couple of senators away on either side from accomplishing virtually everything that the American people want.
Well, I think about, right, we're hearing a lot about swing states, right? The 7 states. I'm in Florida. And I know you're saying, go, state. Right? A kind of a swing state. They're saying what Trump's ahead by 2 points. I don't know. In the past 4 years, they said we got an extra about 1 million registered Republicans. Let's just take maybe another fully red or fully blue state. In those states, you still feel that a vote, because of the electoral college system, and maybe explain about that, the electoral college system and how that works, and even in cases where it's, fully Republican or fully Democrat states, why it still matters to vote.
Okay, well, first of all, I think the electoral college is racist. That was the foundation of it. And I think it's anti-democratic, and it would be unconstitutional. And you as a lawyer understand that if it wasn't for the fact that it's in the Constitution. And I actually can tell you some really good news. First of all, one of the reasons that especially young people tell me they think the system is broken and their vote doesn't count is because of the electoral college. Because de facto, I live in California, my vote really doesn't count for president. I mean, Kamala Harris is going to win this, state no matter what I do, right? So there is this feeling that every vote should count, and under the presidential part of the electoral college, right, your vote really doesn't count. But there is an effort that is very, 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 very close to changing the electoral college system, where your vote in Florida, my vote in California, and people's votes in the reddest of red states all will count equally. And it's only about 5 states away from superseding the constitutional electoral college. It's called the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. It was created in 2006. And what it says is that because states under the Constitution have absolute ability on their own and discretion to award electoral college votes however they want. In fact, we have Maine and Nebraska, as you may know, that actually give some of their electoral college votes based on who wins particular congressional districts. But under the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, whoever wins the national popular vote, no matter who wins those individual states, would get all of those states' electoral college votes. And right now, 17 states, plus the District of Columbia, have signed this compact into their state law. with a total of 209 electoral college votes. And you know how many electoral college votes we need to elect a president, right?
I think it was what, 276?
270.
270,
270.
yeah.
270 is the magic number of America for a whole bunch of reasons. But if you get 270 electoral college votes, you become president of the United States. Right now, this compact has states and DC worth 209 electoral college votes. If if the people in these other states elect 9 more state legislators, state senators, state assembly people in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Arizona, and Nevada in this election on November 5th, and those additional people who support ending the electoral college as we know it and having a national popular vote pass the bills in those states, and they're all very, very, very close. We then get 260 electoral college votes dedicated to changing the electoral college as we know it. And then next year in Virginia, that became very, very close to passing this. They have 13 electoral college votes. If we elect a different governor who would sign that bill, we would be at 273. And here's the cool news. No one knows this except people watching your podcast and a few others, that if that happens, if we get over the 270 in terms of states that have passed this bill, we will be able to elect our next president in 2028 by a national popular vote.
Wow. That's, I didn't realize how close that is.
But see, the problem is no one wants to talk about civics or how the government actually works. And it's all about, I hate Trump, or I hate Kamala, or she's this, or he's that. It's like, that's BS. Let's become transactional American voters. For example, if I need to take an airplane at LAX and I call an Uber driver, I don't have to love that Uber driver. I'm hiring that Uber driver to get me safely and on time to LAX. And that's how we should approach electing politicians. You do not have to love them. Kamala Harris will sign certain bills. Donald Trump will sign other bills. Vote based on that.
Do you believe, there's a lot of talk through the years of the security of voting. And I know from my research, and I know you're considered the civics dean. So I'm gonna ask you about, the time, place, and manner of voting. So the audience understands that as we're coming up to the election, right? So everybody has to vote. What does that mean? Like, what rights do each state have when it comes to voting? And is voting in general in the states, is it honest and is it transparent? Is it truthful? All the conspiracy theories that go out there. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so I have a lot of thoughts on that. First of all, again, under the Constitution, every state, every state has the ability to decide how their elections are carried out, right? And so, unfortunately, fueled by some of these conspiracy theories, there is this thought, especially on one party's side, that mail-in ballots are not safe or that the election is rigged in some way. But the truth is, these generally Republican states put all requirements on voting, right? So, for example, let's take picture ID. Now, that would make absolute sense. Listen, we don't want anyone who's not an actual citizen who's allowed to vote, 18 and over, and they're not felons in certain states, whatever. We don't want anyone who's not eligible to vote. We certainly do not want illegal immigrants to be voting. And the laws are incredibly strong on that. People are thrown in jail if they vote illegally. So we already have laws to cover that. But when you have states like Georgia that say, and I'll get back to the driver's license, if you have states like Georgia that say, you can't even give a bottle of water to someone standing in line, or you have to only vote during certain hours and not other hours, and you can't vote at churches or whatever, that creates impediments to the system. And the United States Congress has come very, very close to passing the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Enhancement Act and the Freedom to Vote Act to make it more of a national standard. Like, you can't do this. You can't discourage voting and all of that. But let's go back to something that people say, but why can't they have IDs? The truth is that a lot of people who are very old or they're very poor or for any other reason don't have driver's licenses. And they don't even have the money or the time, or they're disabled or whatever, to actually go through the DMV and to arrange that. And so all of these states that put these restrictions on voting, I think it's not for a good reason. But to your question about whether it's safe and secure, every single voting expert, including Republicans and people like in Georgia, a guy named Chris Krebs, said that the 2020 election was absolutely safe and it was valid. Now, having said that, you're always going to have screw ups. You're always going to have things that, in fact, go wrong, and people who shouldn't be voting, they accidentally vote, or they purposely vote, or people who did vote, their vote doesn't get counted. There's going to be screw ups, but by and large, it's an extraordinarily small number. The thing I am concerned about, if we're honest, is if you have almost half of the country that has been convinced that Joe Biden and the Democrats stole the 2020 election from Donald Trump. And many, many, many people believe that, even though 63 courts determined that that was not the case, then I can't say with absolute certainty that a very, very strong supporter of Mr. Trump might not do some things behind the scenes. That's why there are so many election poll watchers and whatever, but you can't guarantee everything. But the thing that you can guarantee is that if everyone voted and we got those extra 80 to 100 million people voting, the will of the people would be satisfied, right? So we need everyone to vote, because then little tiny glitches, little improprieties, little whatevers are not going to make the difference.
So I know you're also called Master of Charisma, and I know you coach a lot of public speaking, and I want to stick with the theme of politics. Who would you say is the greatest political public speaker?
Now or in history?
Well, maybe both.
Well, if we count Martin Luther King as a political speaker, I think there's no question he is the greatest public speaker in the last 100+ years. I mean, it's just, he does. If you want to learn how to be a great public speaker, just watch some of his speeches. I also am a huge fan of John F. Kennedy, a huge fan of Bobby Kennedy, huge fan of Franklin Roosevelt. I think Ronald Reagan was extraordinary. I think Barack Obama, when he was not being totally analytical and, Harvard Law School, and he was being more emotional, was extraordinary. I think Bill Clinton was extraordinary. And I think Donald Trump is an extraordinarily effective, skilled public speaker. I wrote an article in the Huffington Post in 2015 saying that because Donald Trump is so incredibly skilled at basic communication to a certain group of people, that he was likely to win the nomination for the Republican nomination and very possibly could win the election. Every single one of my clients, governors, senators, CEOs, whatever, every single one of them thought I was out of my mind. But communication is what wins business. If you're trying to pitch some business or get investments, communication wins elections. And that's why I believe Donald Trump chose J.D. Vance. We saw in the debate, he's an extraordinarily skilled communicator and debater. And that's why Kamala Harris, in a different way, chose Tim Walz. Communication is the most critical thing in public speaking, in elections. And the key to that, if you look at the people that I mentioned, they do all the things that great public speakers do, which is they're having a conversation. Like, remember Franklin Roosevelt, it wasn't a fireside speech or a fireside presentation, it was a fireside chat. It's a conversation from the heart, not just from the head, about something you are authentically passionate about. And authentic passion is the key to everything, authentic passion. And in order to help people, in order to contribute something of value to the people, right? A new idea, help them understand what they need to do to improve their lives, et cetera.
Yeah, right, you can't fake authentic passion, so they have to have journeyed through that, right? Through that space,
That is
you
so
know?
funny you say that, because so many people say to me, yeah, authenticity is great. And if you can fake that, you can do anything. No, you can't. It's like being pregnant. You are either pregnant or you're not pregnant, right? You're either authentic 100% or you're not. And 99.9% authenticity is not authenticity. And I tell that to my business CEO, entrepreneurial clients all the time. You have to be
Yeah.
100% no BS and be real, because it is our ability as human beings to sense dishonesty or inauthenticity is primal. We've developed that ability to stay alive for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And even if you don't consciously realize this person's BSing me, you know it. And it causes you to put up a barrier. And it's very difficult to have real communication when that barrier goes up.
Yeah, I think it's in the first 3 seconds, whether the person's for real or not. But I also like that it's not just authentic, real conversation, but also simple, right? People think that you have to be super complicated, but you have to go exactly where the people are, right? Like I always say, even with business ideas, right? Just repeat. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just show up every day, be disciplined, give something of value to people, do what you say, and do it over a long period of time, right? And that is the way things actually happen.
And you know how you know whether you're being simple enough or not simple? It's and I did a BBC Maestro course on this, and I think my largest chapter, there were like 26 chapters, video chapters on this. And I think the largest one was the chapter on reading the room. So when you're talking to someone, and if you're being too complicated, using too much jargon, talking over someone's head, not connecting with them, there is an absolute 100% certain way to know that. And that is for you to be paying attention, you to be looking at them, watching their head, watching their eyes, watching their shoulders, watching their arms, watching whether they're leaning in or leaning back, and notice whether you're connecting with them, because you can feel the connection. And one of the really great things, which is why COVID was so terrible, human beings need human to human contact. And Zoom calls are effective, but it's not quite the same. Because you know why? There's actually a neurological reason for it. First of all, we are pack animals like dogs. We need to be connected to other human beings for our mental health. Almost every mass shooter is a loner, and there is a reason for that. But I just found this out the last couple of years, that when human beings look in each other's eyes, oxytocin, the bonding chemical, which is incredibly healthy for your human neurology and physiology, gets released in both people. But
Amazing. I did not know that. Yeah.
But the old gold standard for public speaking, which is horrible. It's like I'm in LA and someone says, "Oh, you want to go visit your friends here in Florida, right? Get on a Hawaiian Airlines flight and go to Honolulu." Right? It's the complete opposite. The gold standard of public speaking was you want to look over the heads of the audience or you want to imagine them naked, which is the very worst thing you can do, because you're not making the eye contact, which is essential. And you're not also reading the room, right? If you're looking over their head or imagining them naked, and that could be highly distracting, right? You're not understanding who they are or what they're feeling. And most importantly, you're disrespecting them. It becomes all about you instead of about them. So I have 4 simple words that I teach. And this is true for every communication. It's all about them. And that applies to political candidates as well. If you have a feeling that Donald Trump really cares about you, or Kamala Harris really cares about you, or Debbie Murcaso Powell in Florida, or Rick Scott, any election, if you really feel that they care about you, you're going to be much more receptive to everything they say.
And I'll tell you, on that point of that uh, we're a herd species, or that we need to connect, like in our primal way. Just in my business, that was the bet that I took, that more and more people will go back to office, and I didn't think that remote work. And we're seeing it each week. We're seeing more and more people. So hopefully, my bet will pay off. With office buildings and people going back to the office.
And how many problems have been created in business relationships and personal relationships because of texts that are misunderstood, because they're out of context, because you're not hearing the voice tone, you're not watching the body language, you're not looking in someone's eyes. And so you're reading that text, the words of that text, in your own head with your own voice tone and assuming a certain body language, and it's often completely wrong.
And I think the stat, what I was reading, was 93% of communication is not even the words, right? In reality, right? It's what did the other person hear, right? That's really what they heard, not what you believe or want them. What did they really hear? And they're only hearing, right? Very, very little of the words.
Yeah, excuse me, you need the voice tone and the body language to communicate. That also, in terms of just the impact that you make. I do a little exercise in my courses that I do all over the world. And I read what is probably, and it's in my book, Words That Shook the World, probably the greatest speech in modern history, the I Have a Dream speech, right? And it just sends chills up people's spine when they hear this speech, when Dr. King delivers it. But I read it with a really boring voice tone and a really boring, stiff body language. And people in my classes go, stop, stop, stop. It's enough. I can't take it anymore. The greatest speech in modern history. So it's not just the words. And if you say, God, I'm going to do this, a politician says, I'm going to do this, but your arms are folded and you're leaning back, or you are looking in some way or sounding insincere and inconsistent with the words that you're saying, that creates a discount factor where people will never trust you again in the same way.
Yeah. So, Richard, what's something that you're grateful for?
Wow. So I'm grateful for a lot, right? There's the superficial stuff. I live in a country where, for the most part, people are not hungry and I'm not hungry, and I have a job and I have an awesome, awesome electric car. Those are the superficial things. And I love what I do. I love being able to help people, but let's go deeper. And it goes back to my hero, who I also have in my book, Albert Einstein. He is my ultimate guru. And he has a quote, which I think is one of the most important things for me and causes me to be so grateful. He says, there's only two ways to look at life. Are you familiar with this quote?
Go ahead. No, some of Albert Einstein I do follow, but go ahead. I'm with you.
It goes, one way to look at it is that there are no miracles, right? It's just tough, dog eat dog. It is what it is. You're born, you die, and, there's no miracles. And the other is that everything is a miracle. And so I am grateful for this incarnation. I believe we are eternal beings. I'm grateful for every single thing. I mean, if people think that this is not a miracle, take one skin cell off your skin, put it under a microscope, and you look at the intricacy, the magic that is in one cell, and realize that we are trillions and trillions of cells interconnected in a way that allows us to have a conversation like we're having now and be totally moved if we look at the world in that way. So I am grateful for everything. I'm particularly grateful, for example, now that my 95-year-old Jewish mother is still sharp as a tack and doing TikToks on my TikTok channel that go viral virtually every time.
I love that. I share that sentiment. The more people can understand, because that, I always say, an inch closer to the sun, we wouldn't exist, and an inch
No, I
away,
know.
we'd freeze, right? And the
And there's a
stat,
gazillion examples of that.
yeah, the stat that we just exist is against, statistic logically, against all odds. If we lived each day, just take a minute each day before the day starts, and live that way, all of that noise, all the stresses and things that come into your day, your complete perspective, because that's what we have. We go through life in our mind, and our perspective will completely shift. So
And I
I
think,
share that
I'm sorry.
sentiment. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think the way to focus on that. So when I was 6 years old, I was thinking about existence and like, how did I get here? Right. And then ultimately my parents, grandparents, and all the way back to God. Well, who created God? What was here before God? Right. And I literally broke out into a cold sweat at 6 years old. And I made a decision that I was going to figure this out. And so I went to India, and I've done a lot of journey into that question my entire life. And I think it ultimately comes down to two things: that we are here for two reasons. One is to learn, right? And to evolve our soul, because I do believe our soul is infinite and never dies. And the other, which is the most important thing in life, is we're here to contribute what we uniquely can contribute. And the 8 billion people on the planet and everyone else is unique. There will never, ever, 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 ever be another you. Even if we cloned you, it wouldn't be the same person. And so you are a once in a universe, once in a multiverse, once in existence phenomenon. And your job is to leverage what you came in with, the resources, the assets, the perspectives, the skills, to support and help other people.
And what's something that's a common denominator of great public speakers? What would you say that is?
I think it's the thing I just said. I mean, I had the unbelievable, and I'm so grateful for this, unbelievable experience of being with Tony Robbins towards the very, very beginning of his career. He was 23 and 24 years old. And he has lived by what I'm going to tell you, and was such an incredible influence on me. Because people, when he was young, was, oh, he's a charlatan. He's just in it for money. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's trying to be famous. And I said, no, 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 no. Tony Robbins has the biggest heart, probably also physically, the biggest heart I've ever seen of any human being in my life. And he cares so, so, so deeply. And for 40 plus years, his entire career has been driven by this one thing, and that is a deep, deep, deep emotional desire to help and support and to love people. And that's what makes a great speaker.
Yeah. And Richard, I want to say thank you so much. Hopefully, we'll have a smooth transition in this election, and there'll be peace onto the world and great things. How can people learn more about you, get your book, and follow you on social?
So I've really been having a lot of fun with TikTok. I think I am so grateful for social media, where I can have an idea about politics or spirituality or whatever. I actually did my biggest TikTok. It's got over 1 million views. Was I just interviewed a friend of mine, Danny and Brinkley, who is a New York Times bestselling author. He's died 4 times. He wrote a book, about reincarnation, or several of them. And 1.1 million people saw that interview, right? And I have an idea, and I sit down and I do something, and 1,000 people, or sometimes 200,000 people, get to benefit from what I want to contribute, right? So I'm very active on TikTok. It's at Civics Dean, Richard Greene, the Civics Dean, at Civics Dean. And I don't do Instagram that much. I do a little bit of Facebook. That's probably the best way, is to follow me. And also I'm on Substack. So Richard Greene on Substack. I love Substack. I get to put those things into writing. My book, Words That Shook the World, has been out of print for a long time, but you can still get it on Amazon. My TED Talk, I think, is a really useful condensation of very outside the box thinking about how to overcome your fear of public speaking. And then I'm the BBC maestro for public speaking and communication. That's like masterclass, but run by the BBC. And people can download that course, and that you have to pay for, but it's a 5.5-hour course. Or people can contact me on Richard at the name of my book, wordsthatshooktheworld.com. I'm 70 years old, and all I want to do for the next 20, 30, whatever years is take what I've learned. I've spent my entire life learning about politics and civics and spirituality and public speaking and environmental stuff and health and whatever, and share it, because there's a difference between being happy, which is, I just got a new car, and being fulfilled. And I think the only way we as human beings can be fulfilled is to contribute to others.
Well, thank you so much, Richard. And also 3.4 million views on your TED Talk. Congratulations on that, right? And blessings and good things. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed my conversation with Richard. Next week, we chat with Peter Crone. Peter is a thought leader in human potential and performance and is known as the Mind Architect. He specializes in helping people overcome the constraints of their subconscious minds so they can ditch their limiting beliefs. Peter works with CEOs, professional athletes, entrepreneurs, and more to help shape their behavior, their health, their relationships, and their performance. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, we'd be grateful for a like, share, and subscribe. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, feel free to leave a rating and review. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you again soon.